Like many of you, I've spent some time thinking about the upcoming elections, but honestly, I just don't care. Now, my apathetic attitude towards national elections and politics in general really stems from the dichotic nature of our two party system, but that's really a musing for another time. When the primaries came around, I looked forward to the announcement of who would be running for each party, not really because I particularly cared, but because I wanted to know who I'd be laughing at when I was watching The Daily Show for the next few months. The Democrats put forth Hillary as expected, a sort of, animatronic kind of political machine with zero personality and a husband who got caught with his dick in an intern's mouth while he was president of the country. And then they also had Bernie Sanders, a man who honestly looked like he was old enough to have spent summer evenings with Karl Marx, which actually could kind of explain some of his radical socialist ideas, like universal health care and a system of colleges and universities paid for by the government. I mean, where did he think he was going to get money for that? I mean, he would have had to cancel like 2 or maybe even 3 of those nuclear class military submarines to afford that. I mean, just absolutely insane. And I'm not really sure if there was a third Democrat. I should probably look that up. But I just don't care enough. So those were the 2 and non-third from the Dems. The Republicans, of course, offered up a much broader selection in their comedy of errors. One of my personal favorites was good old Jeb Bush. He was running on the platform of, well, if George could do it, how hard can it really be? And while the stance, does lack substance, I found it oddly compelling. I mean, if George W. Bush could be president, who can't? They also offered up Ted Cruz and Marco Rubio. Now, what you may not know is that this is actually just one person. Same person, yeah. It was just running on 2 completely different platforms in an attempt to double his chances. Unfortunately, both his personalities were such, epic failures that even if they were to somehow combine, they barely would have rated a footnote in history. Unless it was some sort of like a humorous rendition on history, in which case, these 2 clowns certainly were, like main character material. They also had a slew of other, token contestants. My personal favorite among those, of course, was Donald Trump. Just proof, as if we needed it, that all it really takes to become a political candidate for president of America is a pocket full of cash and a willingness to publicly denounce minorities. So we emerged from the primaries with a choice between Hillary and Trump, as if anybody really needed another example of how fucked up our political system is. And ever since then, the mudslinging hasn't stopped. We got Hillary, who's a threat to national security, and she either doesn't understand how email works or she doesn't care if she's breaking the law. And then on the other side, we got Trump with 0 experience and absolutely no political platform. And honestly, he couldn't give 2 fucks about a minority of any kind. Except, of course, for that economic minority known as the 1%, those who possess 99% of the nation's wealth. He likes them plenty, but aside from that, all other minorities can kind of just go fuck themselves. I mean, essentially we're left with the choice between a shit sandwich and a giant douche. That's right, South Park guys, I just ripped off your shit. Because you know what? It was funny then, and it's still funny now. Deal with it. But seriously, I can't recall a single piece of media coverage or election propaganda which discussed the candidate's political platform or positive qualifications for the job of president. And as we get closer to the election, this shit hasn't changed. The only new development is Hillary's questionable health and unknown condition. And this may become the deciding factor in the election. FDR would be rolling in his grave. Well, probably not rolling. I mean, he had polio, so I don't know if he could roll. But he'd be doing the polio person's equivalent of rolling in his grave. This is just getting ridiculous. So let me break this down for you to its simplest form. At this point, all that really matters is who can fulfill the presidential roles in the way that's best for the American people. For all practical purposes, especially in this political climate, the president is going to be nothing but a figurehead. They may enact a presidential veto every now and then, but their ability to take unilateral action is going to be almost non-existent. As a figurehead, their primary function is going to be representing the American people on the world stage. That being the case, do you really want someone who is openly against political correctness to be our figurehead? I mean, sure, Trump can be buddy-buddy with Russia all he wants, but in the end, that's not going to affect U.S. foreign policy. It is going to make us look really fucking stupid to the rest of the world, though. And yeah, Trump can propose that all Muslims wear identifications when they immigrate to the country, because that'll somehow keep us safe as U.S. citizens, but that law's never going to pass. And in the eyes of the world, we're just going to look like bigot assholes, led by some lame duck. And at this point, Hillary looks like she may be on her deathbed, and probably won't even survive a 4-year term as president. And much like the Donald, she won't be able to accomplish any of her economic or social goals here at home. But at least on the foreign stage, she won't say something that her campaign, or the country in this case, is going to have to apologize for next week. I mean, sure, she may have a stroke and do some crazy dance move. She may forget where she is and need someone to remind her. But that's just personally embarrassing. That's not a black mark against the nation. I mean, with Trump, there are only so many times that we're going to be able to say, sorry, he shouldn't have said that, our bad, before other nations' public opinion of us is beyond repair. Now, don't get me wrong, I fucking hate Hillary. I think she would be a terrible president, but at least she has some political experience and doesn't openly embrace being offensive. Trump is going to wander around, completely reliant on his advisors, which to date he has a terrible track record with hiring, because he has no practical understanding of how politics works. It's nothing like running a business. But unlike Trump, you're intelligent people, so you already knew that. And while he's blundering around like the lame duck that he is, his offensive thoughts and beliefs will continue to fly out that unregulated shithole he calls a mouth. At this point, I think the best we can hope for is Hillary wins the election and then is deemed physically incapable of fulfilling the role of president. I mean, how bad could Tim Kaine be? Definitely not worse than these two dipshits. Those are my musings on the upcoming elections. Thanks for listening and have a great night. As a special thank you for sticking around, I'll leave you with this final thought.